I'm Maria Elena Giassi, and this is Currents. Ahead of this weekend's ceremony, our Liz Faublas sits down with Cardinal-designate Timothy Dolan in Rome.
I said, Happy New Year, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, well, I have good news for you. The Holy Father tomorrow will announce that you're a cardinal. So that was it.
We'll also hear from a man who worked closely with the Archbishop in the Eternal City.
His brother priests in all of the different places he's been, including the seminary, see him as being accessible to them.
Plus, he's phenom on the basketball court, but his life is about much more than free throws and three-pointers.
If you look back at my story, it doesn't matter where you look, but you know, God's fingerprints are all over the place.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. It's less than 3 days away, the big day when New York's Archbishop and 21 other men from around the world are elevated to cardinal. It is a distinct honor and recognizes these bishops and priests as worthy of being some of the Pope's closest advisors. Our Liz Faublas is there covering the events, and she had a chance to sit down with the person who may very well be the man of the hour.
I'm here at the Pontifical North American College in Rome, where earlier I had a chance to speak with Cardinal-designate Timothy Dolan about his elevation ceremony. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I want to begin with a very personal question. Do you remember what you were doing the moment you received the call informing you of the news you would soon wear the red hat?
Well, this will sound as if it's manufacturing this, but it's not. I was on retreat at the seminary, St. Joseph's Seminary at Dunwoody. I love to go on retreat the first full week of the new year. So I was there, and Father Jim Cruz and I had started on our retreat on Sunday, which was New Year's Day. And then we were going to go home Thursday afternoon. So it was Thursday morning. So it was the last day of retreat. We had said Mass together at 9 o'clock in the little chapel there. And so I just walked back in, and I had my cell phone with me, and I wasn't taking calls because it was retreat. So, but when the cell phone rang, you know, it's got that caller ID, and it said the Apostolic Nunciature, which is the Holy See's, the Vatican's embassy in the nation's capital. So, you know, when I wasn't thinking that's what he was calling. Archbishop Vigano is the papal nuncio, and he will periodically call, as I'm sure he does a lot of bishops, to talk about something or to ask some advice about a local situation. So I said, oh, I need to talk to the nuncio. So I did, and I said, Happy New Year, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, well, I have good news for you. The Holy Father tomorrow will announce that you're a cardinal. So that was it.
Tell us about your relationship with Cardinal-designate O'Brien and his influence on you in achieving the goals and this mission.
He's a friend. He's a brother. See, he's a lot older than me. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I did not.
But when I came here as a seminarian in 1972 from the Archdiocese of St. Louis, he was a graduate priest. And so I kind of got to know him pretty well, just as seeing him around, and I liked him. And then he and I got particularly close through a towering figure in American history by Monsignor John Tracy Ellis, who was a great church historian and a wonderful gentleman and teacher. And he came here to Rome in 1974 to stay for a year. We called him the scholar in residence. Mm-hmm. Ed O'Brien liked him very much and listened to him intently, as did Tim Dolan. So we got even closer through that. And then we kind of kept in touch through the years, and then he was rector here before me, so I followed him. Mm-hmm. And then we got even closer. And then, of course, when I went to New York, hallelujah, because that's his hometown. So one of the first people I called after getting the news, because I asked the nuncio after I said, oh my, I'm very surprised and I'm not worthy. Of course, then I quickly returned to my humanity and said, oh, are there any other Americans being named cardinal? And he said, yes, Archbishop O'Brien. I said, well, hallelujah. So I waited a little while and gave him a call. And of course, the two of us were near tears, and he said it well. He said, well, not only am I honored and happy to be a cardinal, but to think that you and I will become members of the college together.
And we will have more coverage from our Liz Faublas in Rome on tomorrow night's show. Annette will bring you live coverage of the consistory at which Archbishop Dolan and 21 others will be elevated to cardinal. Our coverage of that gets underway Saturday morning at 4:30. Today, Archbishop Dolan also spoke with reporters, and we'll hear what he had to say a little bit later in the show. But stay tuned, there's more currents ahead. When we return, a Brooklyn priest who is a close personal friend of Archbishop Dolan joins us to talk about the man who will soon be cardinal. Welcome back. This Saturday, New York Archbishop Timothy Dolan will be one of 22 men elevated to cardinal in the Catholic Church. As Archbishop of New York, Timothy Dolan holds a position of prominence, and he will join a distinguished list of New York archbishops to be made cardinal. And Archbishop Dolan, who is also the president of the U.S. Bishops' Conference, had an accomplished resume even before arriving in New York. Among the many ways he served the Church, as rector of the North American College in Rome from 1994 through June of 2001. The school educates American seminarians and provides a place of residence for American priests who are studying in Rome. While there, Archbishop Dolan made many friends, including Monsignor Michael Curran, a priest of the Diocese of Brooklyn, who Archbishop Dolan had asked to serve at the school. Our news director, Ed Wilkinson, had a chance to sit down with Monsignor Curran.
Monsignor Curran, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Ed.
It's nice to have friends in high places, isn't
That's
it?
for sure.
You're a very good friend of Cardinal-designate Dolan. How did you first come to know him?
First came to know him in a certain sense. When I was a student at the North American College, he had already been ordained, but his name lived on as one of the great personalities of the last few years, and I came to know him directly when he asked me to join the faculty as the academic dean. Mm-hmm. So that was in the late 1997, and we kind of hit it off from there. That brings us up to this point.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I would think that you know, as being on a seminary faculty, he would be a great role model for the men who are studying. I mean, he's got a great personality. He's the kind of guy you would like a priest to be.
Sure.
What do you think of some of the outstanding qualities that seminarians would see in him?
I think seminarians would first and foremost see his joy at being a priest and his joy at having been for a good period of time a parish priest. Mm-hmm. Because I think that was the horizon that he looked at his priestly life through or at. And that's what he encouraged in all of the seminarians and all of the priests who were working with him as well. So mm-hmm. I think, first and foremost, his love for the priesthood, his comfort in it, he's very human mm-hmm. and in so many ways. And I think that would be the first thing that the guys would look to as a role model, and it also became for them a great source of encouragement as they went on.
Yeah, and what do you think is brother priest, how do you think they regard him? Because, I mean, a bishop is really, again, a role model for his priests, you know,
Sure.
and some of that priests have to rally around and you know, exemplify.
Sure.
How do you think priests look at him and regard him?
I think priests look at him exactly that way, as a role model. I think one of the most important things that a priest, especially a diocesan priest, but any priest, needs to be is accessible to people, available to them in a way that's genuine, not just trying to fit you in, you know, and be rid of you in a certain sense, but to really be available to people in the midst of a big schedule. So I think his brother priests in all of the different places he's been, including the seminary, see him as being accessible to them and encouraging to them. You know, I think he is very much aware of being a brother priest, mm-hmm. even as a bishop. Yeah.
Do you stay in touch with him? I mean, since you were in Rome and you both came back to the United States,
Sure.
have you stayed in touch with him?
Sure. We speak to each other regularly, and that was over the last 10 years. When I came back, he was back a year ahead of me, and I had the chance to visit him in his different assignments out in Milwaukee, and then certainly here in New York. I've been, and a lot of us have been, you know, guests at his home, and he's a very good and gracious host. Yeah.
Did you have the idea that this guy was going to take off like this?
Well, I think we all knew that he was destined for real leadership, because that was the kind of person that we saw. but nothing surprised me. But at the same time, it's all happened so fast. He's only been a bishop just about 10 years, and everything moved quickly. And I think that's probably because the Holy Father saw him as being the right man for the times in the places that he has been assigned to. So, not to answer the question, not really surprising, you know, but it's been a fast turn of events.
And he seems to be a big baseball fan. Is that true? I mean, is that really? I mean, he
Oh,
said he
he
rooted
is.
for the Brewers, and now he's a New York fan.
In his living room or his bedroom area, he has the caps of the Cardinals, his hometown team, the Brewers, and Yankee and Met hats too. So he's a big fan, and he's very diplomatic about it.
So he was always a Cardinal fan. Huh?
He's always a Cardinal fan. Yeah. And he's also a great admirer of Stan Musial. And I think that he came to know him, and I think Stan gave him a gift upon his coming to New York. Yeah.
And you actually accompanied him to a Mets game here when he first came to New York.
Sure
right?
did. It was just days after his installation, and we were guests of Mr. Wilpon. And when you're sitting in between the Archbishop of New York and the owner of the New York Mets, you become a Met fan real fast.
You rooted for the Mets.
Yes, definitely, that night, yeah.
And you'll be in Rome with the Cardinal when he's
hopefully I'll
installed?
be there for the ceremonies, the actual consistory and the conferral of the proverbial red hat, and the next day for the Mass with the conferral of the rings. So
wonderful, and hope you have a safe flight. Thanks so much for coming by today, and
My
we'll be in
pleasure,
touch
Ed.
with
Thank
you
you.
when you come back, huh?
Look forward to it.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Stay tuned. There's more currents ahead. Some of the strictest anti-abortion measures move closer to becoming law in one state. We'll have that story and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Maria Elena Giassi. Coming up in just a bit, Cardinal-designate Dolan is not the only one taking New York by storm. We'll hear the story about a basketball star who's also the talk of the town. But first, let's have a look at the rest of the day's headlines. In the lead up to his elevation to Cardinal, New York Archbishop Timothy Dolan continues to speak out about the controversial contraception mandate. Archbishop Dolan, who is also president of the U.S. Bishops' Conference, tells the Associated Press that the bishops will use legislative and court challenges to oppose the measure. The mandate from the Department of Health and Human Services requires most religious employers to cover artificial contraception and some abortion-inducing drugs in employee health plans. Last week, in an interview with CBS, Archbishop Dolan said the mandate was in sharp contrast to previous assurances from President Obama. The Cardinal-designate now tells AP that he wants to take the president at his word, but, quote, it is getting harder and harder to do that. Archbishop Dolan also spoke with reporters in Rome today.
I'm kind of still remain highly grateful that the Catholic community has been so united, even though there might be some diversity about the meaning of the announcement that the president made on Friday. From what I can sense, is Catholics remain very united in still a source of grave concern about still the intrusion upon religious liberty. So that's what we want to. That's what we want to keep thanking them for. Their unanimity, their enthusiasm in the defense of religious freedom. They don't need they're doing it on their own. They don't need us bishops. We thank them and we encourage them, but they've been dynamite. Here's what it comes down to. Does the federal government have the right to tell any church how it can minister, who can minister, how the services can be provided, where they can be provided, under what conditions? Classically, in our American wisdom, that's always been a no. You leave that up to the churches, and that's what we're holding for.
And the bishops say they will team up with other religious groups to fight government intruding on religious liberty. Reuters reports the campaign may include television and radio ads, social media outreach, and encouraging clergy to speak about the subject from the pulpit. Among the ways the bishops are fighting the contraception mandate, lobbying Congress to pass a law that will allow any employer to opt out of medical coverage it disagrees with. And efforts are underway in Washington to overturn the state's law legalizing same-sex marriage. Earlier this week, Governor Christine Gregoire, a Catholic, signed the measure into law. An organization known as Preserve Marriage Washington is attempting to get the issue on the November ballot. The group needs to collect more than 120,000 signatures before June 7th in order to put the law on hold and in the hands of the voters. The National Organization for Marriage says it will help with the effort. Meanwhile, they are arguably two of the strictest anti-abortion measures in the country, and they are closer to becoming law in one state. Virginia's Republican-dominated House passed the bill, including one that declares personhood at the moment of conception. A second bill would require women to have what is known as a transvaginal ultrasound before an abortion. The measures are expected to pass Virginia's Senate, which is also controlled by Republicans. A spokesman for Governor Bob McDonnell, a Catholic, says he will sign the ultrasound bill, but has not taken a position on the personhood measure. Turning now to the Vatican, where the lead up to the elevation of new cardinals may be the big thing, but not the only thing happening. Pope Benedict was greeted by a lively crowd at his weekend general audience. Rome Reports has details.
During the general audience, Benedict XVI reflected on the importance of forgiveness. The Pope spoke about the last words of Jesus on the cross, using it as an example of forgiveness toward persecution. He noted it was also as a sign of hope and confidence toward death, even for those with no relationship with God, such as the thieves that were crucified alongside Jesus.
In his words to the good thief, "Today you will be with me in paradise," he offers sure hope to all those who repent and put their trust in him.
The Pope also spoke of the intercession of Jesus for his executioners, and that ignorance can also lessen the guilt and can open a door to conversion. Benedict XVI also noted there needs to be prayer for those who persecute us.
His final cry, "Father, into your hands, I commend my spirit," expresses Jesus' trust-filled surrender to God's will, one of that unique relationship to the Father which had shaped his own life of prayer.
Among the 6,000 pilgrims in the Vatican's Paul VI audience hall were members of the Spanish soccer team Atletico Madrid. They attended the audience along with pilgrims from the Diocese of Chicago, accompanied by Cardinal Francis George.
Today, Pope Benedict also called on governments and communities to help large families. Speaking to an Italian Association of Large Families, Benedict told them, quote, "There is no future without children." The Pope says that a family made up of many children constitutes a witness of faith, courage, and optimism. And Benedict has also pitched in to help restore a historic church. The pontiff has made a personal donation for the restoration of the Basilica of St. Augustine, which overlooks the ruins of Hippo. Augustine, a doctor of the church, authored many works and is probably best known for his Confessions. Speaking with Vatican Radio, the current Bishop of Constantine Hippo noted Pope Benedict's great respect for St. Augustine. Meanwhile, a Vatican university in Peru may be in hot water. Catholic News Agency reports that the rector of the Pontifical University of Peru has been summoned to the Vatican after the school refused to follow church directives. The university's rector will meet with the Vatican Secretary of State. Among the issues, the university's refusal to acknowledge the Archdiocese of Lima's right to elect the school's rector. From Russia, President Vladimir Putin has signed a decree that will require schools to teach students about religion. According to the website Asia News, students will get to choose what religion they want to learn about: Orthodoxy, Buddhism, Judaism, and Islam. They can also decide to learn about moral ethics. One expert is wary about the idea, saying it is wrong to divide the children into groups based on religion. And a pop singer may have showed up at the Grammys with a fake pope, but a real nun is planning to attend the Oscars. Mother Dolores Hart, who is the subject of an HBO documentary, will attend the awards ceremony on February 26th. It will not be the first time for Mother Dolores. Before becoming a nun, a young Hart was an up-and-coming actress, best known for her debut role as the love interest of Elvis Presley's character in the 1957 film Loving You. The documentary, God is the Bigger Elvis, features Hart and is nominated in the Best Documentary category. Mother Dolores will also be in Queens next month. She will be the guest speaker at a communion breakfast at Corpus Christi Church in Woodside on Sunday, March 18th. Check future editions of the tablet for more details. Stay tuned, there's more currents ahead. When we return, it's Linsanity.
Linsanity! There's this fever going on in New York called Linsanity.
We'll take a closer look at the man who's the talk of the basketball town.
Lynn with the ball in his hands. Fans on their feet. 5, 4. Lynn for the win. Got it.
I would say it's a miracle just because anytime something like this happens, there's a lot more. A lot of stuff has to be put into place, and a lot of it is out of my control. And if you look back at my story, it doesn't matter where you look, but you know, God's fingerprints are all over the place, where there's been a lot of things that had to happen that, you know, I just couldn't control, and you could try to call it coincidence, but at the end of the day, there's 20, 30 things when you combine them all that have to happen at the right time in order for me to be here, and so that's why I call it a miracle.
The focus may be on Rome and the elevation of New York Archbishop Timothy Dolan to Cardinal this weekend, but another New Yorker is garnering headlines. Jeremy Lin has set the basketball world and the Knicks on fire. The team is 6-0 since coach Mike D'Antoni made Lin a starter. And it's somewhat of a Cinderella story for the 6'3" point guard. Lin graduated from Harvard, not exactly a basketball powerhouse during his time at the school. He went undrafted, but wound up playing less than half of the last season with the Golden State Warriors. Lin also spent time in the NBA's developmental league and with a team in China. The Knicks claimed him off waivers just 2 days after Christmas 2011. And if you've listened to anything Lin has been saying at press conferences, he's got more than just team scrimmages to thank for his success on the court. During a recent post-game interview, Lin said he was, quote, thankful to God for everything. CNN's Richard Roth has more on the newest Knicks star's meteoric rise.
Jeremy Lin says he's a low-key guy. He looks unassuming at practice with the New York Knicks. But when the lights go on at the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden,
Jeremy Lin does it again. A magical night for Jeremy Lin.
Jeremy Lin, a rare Asian American in the NBA, is an overnight star and the talk of the big town.
What we're seeing in New York is something that I have never seen, and we haven't seen for generations, really. A guy who can excite the Garden like this out of nowhere.
Is this becoming overwhelming at all for you personally?
Yeah.
Fans have agreed on how to describe the Lin phenomenon.
Linsanity.
Have you seen the alleged effects of Linsanity?
I've seen it everywhere. I've seen it even back home. I'm from the West Coast, and everybody's hitting me up about it, so it's sweeping the nation.
There's this fever going on in New York called Linsanity. And he is just an electrifying player.
Lin was a star at Harvard University, not a traditional launching pad for NBA stars. He wasn't drafted and was later cut by 2 NBA teams before the nose-diving Knicks picked him up.
We had an idea, we liked him, and it worked out. You have to have luck in this league, and he got a bunch of luck, and it worked out for us.
At first, souvenir stores weren't prepared for Linsanity, but now the Lin jersey is a hot number.
Let's go Knicks! Lin, Lin, Lin!
Lin is amazed at his instant fame.
Things are changing so much, and it's like everyone wants to talk to, me or my family, and we're very low-key people and private people, and so sometimes it's a little tough.
Jalen, go Jalen. He's the man.
Lin's parents immigrated from Taiwan. The Chinese media offer non-stop coverage here, and games are shown back to Asia.
Well, it's huge back in Taiwan. People are crazy about him. Like, even my grandma asked about him. Like, my grandma's 90 years old, and she's like, oh, you're covering Jeremy Lin? Oh, good for you.
He's a marketing bonanza, drawing fans such as first-time ticket buyer Chris Lee.
More reason to go now when you have a Chinese-American playing.
I'm a homebody, so I just try to stay inside.
Lin's next goal, though, is to get off the couch, sleeping at his brother's apartment, while trying to revive the Knicks.
That's another goal Lin can knock off his list. He is subletting an apartment from former Knick David Lee. The location, the Trump Tower in White Plains. That is all for this edition of Currents. Coming up tomorrow, an academy in Queens is imparting some wisdom from above. It's our latest School of the Week. Until then, be sure to visit us online at currentsny.net. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Maria Elena Giassi. Thank you for watching and have a good night.